Hello everyone, Giltar here with a video on the topic of 3D printing technology and how it can or has affected the toy industry. Now, as usual with my videos on various discussion topics, I would definitely appreciate any sort of feedback and engagement in this discussion. Text comments are always welcome as long as they actually are taking part in this discussion. Video responses are also greatly appreciated and welcomed as well. So if you have the capability of making a video and uploading it to YouTube, please do a response or reply to this video in that way. Now, as far as 3D printing technology goes, it's something that I don't have any sort of expertise in, not by any means, but it is something I'm familiar with. I've known about 3D printing technology for the last couple of years, mainly through the customizing community of toys, particularly Transformers and G.I. Joe. There are a lot of people in the customizing community that use a company called Shapeways to manufacture their custom parts. And I'll get to Shapeways in a couple of minutes. Now, as far as 3D printing technology goes, for anybody who isn't knowledgeable or aware of what 3D printing is, to explain it in a very simplified and dumbed down manner, 3D printing is essentially a way for specialized printing devices to create layer upon layer of material and literally build up into some sort of object. So a 3D printer can create something as basic and simple as a bowl, or something as complex as an object with multiple integrated moving parts. I saw a video on a demonstration of 3D printing where the person printed out a fully working wrench with moving parts built into it. And in fact, during that demonstration, the person who programmed the 3D printer to do a printing of this wrench also chose to give a separate part that was already in the wrench that is being built into the wrench a different color, which I think turned out to be a red color. So that's actually quite remarkable, and where this really makes some relevance to the notion of using 3D printing technologies in toy manufacturing is the idea that by using something like a 3D printer that can make an object with integrated moving parts, this basically makes the role of the manual laborer who assembles toys on the production line for final sort of shipment, it makes that position obsolete. If a manufacturer like Hasbro, for example, were to use 3D printers to make their G.I. Joe or Transformers toys, a good deal, if not completely, the concept of assembly at the factory basically would be nullified. And in that way, it could save a lot of money. For example, a large company like Hasbro, I imagine, would employ several hundred, if not more, people at their factories who are basically simply responsible for putting certain parts together for the toys during the production stage. 3D printers can do without this. 3D printers can make fully formed objects with integrated moving parts. Now, one thing to consider, though, as a sort of a counterpoint or as a point of consideration is, while a 3D printer can make parts already integrated into an object, we still need to consider painting or color application. That's something that can be done on the factory level, automated when parts are molded in separate components or in separate pieces. That's one advantage of the traditional method of manufacturing. But on the other hand, with 3D printing technology, I'm pretty sure that if they developed or advanced their capability for coloring certain parts or even introducing certain different colors of material at certain layers of manufacturing, the need for painting parts separately would also be obsolete. It would be, not necessary anymore. But again, for me, my consideration as a person who is knowledgeable to a certain extent about Hasbro's sort of how they budget their toy manufacturing, there's a concept of parts count. In order to keep a particular toy within a price bracket or a price range, Hasbro will limit the amount of separate parts a toy can have. So, for example, a deluxe class Transformers toy, which I'll use Canadian pricing, which is about $15 in Canada or about $12 to $13 in the United States. In order for a deluxe toy to be given the green light for production, a designer can't exceed a certain amount of separate parts. So that is something that will limit things like features in the areas of articulation, for example. Um, where 3D printing comes in is that because 3D printing can create an object that is fully formed with integrated moving parts, the budgetary constraint of having a limited parts count is going to be largely taken care of because you don't have to worry about paying for labor to assemble these products in the factories. A printer can do it all. Um, and another advantage of 3D printing is that it's really not that expensive in the grand scheme. A friend of mine recently purchased a 3D printer for himself. So it's not an industrial model, it's like a commercial unit that an individual can afford to buy. And definitely it's not perfect. It is a current model, but it's not on the same level as, for example, an industrial level 3D printer. But at the same time, the fact that an individual can buy a 3D printer these days without breaking their bank account is very telling about the level of technology that's available as well as the cost, I guess, effectiveness of it. Because right now he's actually still sort of getting to know 3D printing technology. He's actually working on designing in a 3D modeling program a head sculpt for a Grimlock Transformers toy. He wants to make his own, which I think is so neat and so cool because without something like a 3D printer, my friend would have to either learn how to sculpt and cast his own custom-made parts, or he would have to outsource it to a toy customizer for a fee essentially for more than just parts, but also labor and the cost of that person's expertise. Well, because my friend is a graphic designer and because he is familiar with design, he is able to use something like a 3D modeling program, create a 3D blueprint for an object, feed it to his 3D printer, and then allow the 3D printer to do the rest of the work. So he doesn't have to mess around with making a sculpt of the head accessory. He doesn't have to mess around with coming up with a way to creating a molding cast for that head. He doesn't have to go through the process of filling that mold with material to make that head sculpt. He can just design the blueprints of this object, feed it to the 3D printer, and then the 3D printer makes it for him. It's not a perfect technology by any means, but it's something that is definitely within our grasp. It's something that normally would probably be on an industrial level or an individualized expertise level capability. The 3D printing technology that we have access to currently bridges that gap and allows essentially the everyday person with a bit of extra work, not a lot, but with a bit of extra work, to sort of do things for themselves. And the thing is that even if you don't have artistic skill and experience and knowledge, there are a lot of people who have uploaded their 3D designs on the internet for people to download, so that if you wanted a custom part for a toy, you could go online and chances are someone may have it, or at the very least, perhaps you could even commission a person to design that 3D model for you for a minimal fee, and then you take care of the rest of the design, or the manufacturing rather, if you have your own 3D printer. So I think it's a really exciting piece of technology for the toy industry. I think that we'll see in the very near future, within several years, large companies such as Hasbro perhaps taking the leap and getting into 3D printing technology for their products. So that's pretty much my thoughts on the topic. There's so much more I could say on it, but I don't want to exceed the 10-minute mark by too much. So as usual, please respond. If any of you out there have more expertise on 3D printing technologies, please take part in this discussion and let us know what you think. As usual, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you at the next video.